I have been, as I regularly am in this show, pretty humbled over the past couple of years or more, right? So I went in making very strong cases against political action, focusing on the voluntary family, on the peaceful parenting stuff and all that. And, I have to be an empiricist. I can't sit there and say to the government, well, your welfare state program isn't working. How come you just keep doing it, right? Well, I have to, I put forward a project for the world of those who watch what I do. I put forward a project and I said, forget about political stuff, focus on peaceful parenting. And I started talking about this 7 or 8 years ago. To be responsible, I'm a businessman, and I have been my whole adult life, and I've been entrepreneurial for like the last 20 years. You can't just set up a project and blindly, put the blinders on and just keep going and not circle back to see what the result has been. Mm-hmm. And the result has been, in general, that people have continued with their political stuff and have soundly and blindly avoided the voluntary family and peaceful parenting and all that other stuff, right? So I have to recognize that my call for action in the libertarian context has largely gone not just unheeded, but completely, it's like I never said anything. It's completely, that's how heavy the defenses are, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to recognize that. I can't just keep going on blindly as if I have no data that has come back since I started this conversation. I think the truth about voting was 2006. That's 9 years ago. So I've got 9 years of additional, and that's when I was just starting out. That was like a 6 or 8 months after I'd even started the whole show. And so I have, Mike, if you can check that day, I think it's either 06 or 08. I can't, but either way, it's a long time ago, and I have a huge amount of additional data that I have gathered in my close to decade now of activism that I would be completely hypocritical to ignore. Now, if people gave me the choice, like the fantasy world, right, and they said, Steph, you can either have people do October 28, 2008, not 2006. But I talked about limits of political power even before that. My very sixth podcast was about self-defense and talking about it more in a family situation rather than a social situation. But so if there was a giant buttons, right, and one said, tens of millions of dollars and millions of hours into political action, political activism, or tens of millions of dollars and millions of hours into spreading peaceful parenting, I would push the peaceful parenting one, of course, right? If I had the choice about where I think resources should be allocated, since I'm not a central planner, I don't have that choice. And so the idea of me saying, well, don't do any political activism because that's going to take away from your peaceful parenting. Well, I made that case to try and get people more into the peaceful parenting stuff, which has happened at some individual level. But as far as a movement goes, it has barely budged. In fact, it's basically people have now resolutely avoiding the topic and me to some degree, rather than doing that which I've made, I think, a very strong, reasoned and empirical case for. So that having been said, the idea of saying, well, you see, if I was trying to convince people not to do politics so that they could do peaceful parenting. And if they had, we'd be, hugely ahead. We're 7 or 8 years further down the road. Peaceful parenting would have spread to millions of households, and we'd have a giant, fantastic movement that would be a huge beacon of light to the rest of humanity on where we need to go as a species. That has not happened. And so the reality is, if I say don't do political action, it's not like then people say, okay, well, I'm going to do peaceful parenting. No matter how strong a case I've made for that, that's just not what's happened. So people are going to go and do political action. I'm not going to try and make that case again and pretend something different is going to occur. I'm going to work at the individual level and accept the limitations of people's capacity to listen. And I say that, it sounds kind of, well, they're just not listening. Well, because it's not even a discussion, right, in the libertarian community as a whole. Like, is spanking a violation of the non-aggression principle should be a very important topic because it's what people could really change and affect in their lives. But it's not in general. I mean, Walter Block and I had a debate, and a few other people have mentioned it in passing, but it's not anything that's foundational. So people are going to go do their political action no matter what. And I had no thoughts in any way, shape, or form that any of the non-Trump candidates, whether they're on the left or the right, would have any effect on the mainstream media. What Trump is going to show to people is that the media is biased and the media is a paper tiger. The media is not something to be that afraid of.